It's actually,
I've been to Amsterdam and Italy.
Budapest, I was really surprised. I thought Budapest would be not very interesting. But well, the venue there, they have a fort on one side, Buda and Pest, so there's two different places. Okay. Didn't think they.
I will go ahead and call a meeting to order. I don't want to use the gavel because that's weird for me. So calling the meeting to order. First up on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have minutes dated July 12th, 2021. So if anyone wants to make a motion to approve.
Minutes be approved as presented.
Okay, anyone like to second?
I'll second.
Second. And all those in favor say aye.
I'll say aye, even though I haven't read.
Anyone opposed? Great. Next on the agenda, we have topics from the floor. Would you like to do public comment at all, Pat? Or?
I'm just here to support the urban trails and trails in Columbia County in general and the Riverfront Development.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Next up on our agenda is counselor's report, and it doesn't look like Doug is here yet, so if he ends up attending, we'll jump back to that. Next on the agenda, just going right through. New business. So first up under new business is the Botanical Garden update / report, which would be last time Brandon gave the history of the Botanical Gardens, and so we moved the update / report to this meeting. So Jerry, if you have any updates you want to give today, otherwise we can.
Oh no, I'll just say what the Botanical Gardens is.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'm glad Pat's here supporting urban trails. Thank you, Pat. First of all, the Botanical Gardens is a nature park. And so I'll read what nature parks are. Nature parks are land set aside for preservation of significant natural resources, remnant landscapes, open spaces, and visual aesthetics, bufferings. They may provide or protect the environment. I have found some little four-toed salamanders down there, which are not protected, but they're very rare in this area. They're really cute little boogers. They're not the ones that you think are the little brown and, you know.
Belly ones?
No, not the orange belly ones.
Those are everywhere.
Those are everywhere. No, these little salamanders are, they're real skinny, really skinny, first of all. And their limbs are very skinny, and they have 4 toes. And I've only found 1 or 2 of them, a couple of them down there, and it's been a few years. So that was, I thought, pretty cool. Protected environment areas such as wetland, habitat, streams, creek corridors are unique. Are endangered species and plants. There's none of those there to my knowledge. But it is kind of I think, a unique area because it's an old quarry, which, maybe in 100 years or so, people would, think that was kind of neat that this used to be an area where there was a lot of rock mining. Nature parks may vary in size from small patches of less than 10 acres to large properties of 200 acres. Nature parks typically serve the community's wild population, include greenways, natural areas preservation and preserves. Public access to natural areas may be limited to these sites, which often include wetlands. There is a wetlands there, steep hillsides. There is steep hillsides there, or other similar spaces. Some nature parks may be managed secondarily to provide passive recreation opportunities. These sites may contain trails, displays, viewpoints, and seating areas, which I think this will all have. So here's a picture of the Botanical Garden right here. Most of you have a map of it. It shows the trails that are currently there now. Right here. Let's see here. I wasn't really quite ready to go today on this. The nature park, let's see, Columbia Nature Park is 3.2 acres, so you can see it's kind of on the small side. It's not real big. Levels of classification. So nature preserves, we have in our town 9.8, and it says that we need 15.9 more. Now, I don't know,
Per acre.
it is acres, 15.9 acres. I don't know if this includes, the Dalton Lake Nature Preserve, which is a nature preserve, not a nature park, but very similar. Okay. As far as acres provided, there's 9.8, and it says we need 21.4 more to be up to service level. Okay, as far as the report is how people look at the Botanical Gardens. Is it well maintained, somewhat unmaintained, not maintained? So about 9% said it was well maintained. I don't know, they must have just walked the bottom part. Somewhat.
Is old, so this
This is old.
data.
This is old data. And somewhat maintained is 54%. I kind of agree with that. Somewhat unmaintained, 13%. I think you could go along with that too. Not maintained at all, well, 22%. I guess it depends on the time of year you go there. But overall, as you guys know, the park is not real maintained. As far as satisfaction with the park, about 31% say they're satisfied with the park, 40% somewhat satisfied, so that's about 70% that won't go down there and think, hey, this is okay. And then there's about another 18 plus somewhat dissatisfied, and then about 9% that are totally unsatisfied. Back in May, was it May, Carmen, that we had the cleanup?
Yeah.
Back in May, we had a cleanup, and there was about 24, 25 people there. Good turnout. A lot of people from the neighborhood, from all over the neighborhood that want to come there and help. And that worked really, really well. And we're planning on doing another one, not on the agenda yet, October, something like that, Carmen?
Yeah, I think that was the plan. We would do kind of one in the fall. October's still fall, right?
I guess, or
Yeah,
November, something like
fall-ish.
that.
Yeah.
So the first one, we basically cleaned up garbage, picked up garbage, and we widened the trails. A bunch of guys, 3 or 4 guys, people brought weed eaters, and so the trails were really a lot better after they got through, cleaned off, did take down, what's the lady's name that works for Scottish Bay Watershed?
Emily?
Emily? She took a group of people and cleaned ivy, which I was really impressed. We were there about 2.5 hours and cleaned off a big area of ivy. And we also cleaned off a small area of blackberries, and I'd sprayed for poison oak. But they want to leave the poison oak. There's lots and lots of poison oak there. So basically, we're just kind of killing the poison oak that's next to the trails. And there's just huge masses of it because, as Emily said, it's really good habitat for wildlife. And the berries are eaten by a lot of birds, which, as a biologist, I thought, I didn't realize that. This fall, if we have a cleanup, which we probably will, I think we'll probably get a good turnout again because the neighbors in the neighborhood are really interested in helping. We're going to work on cleaning invasive plants, right?
Yep.
Okay. As far as the park is concerned, if you weren't there, there's basically 2 parts to the park. There's the lower part, which is really wetlands, and there's really a fairly nice trail that runs through the lower part. And then there's a rocky part here, a cliff part right here. It's fairly steep, and there's a trail that goes up it. And then it comes up to a plateau where there was lots of quarrying. Well, I won't say lots of quarrying there, where there was lots of large rocks left from the quarrying. And some of them were pushed down the hill here. So this part is wetlands, and this part up here is pretty much just rocky area. And we're hoping on, getting rid of some of the invasive plants and making the trails a little better in the future.
Are there specific improvements that you'd like to see?
Well, of course. I think we should have a kiosk at every park. Especially a kiosk that has like a map on it. Like the example of the day that we cleaned up, I stuck around there and kind of stacked up stuff and and this couple showed up from Portland. And they said, oh, we come and, we walk here. And I said, well, would you like a map? And they said, oh yeah, we'd like a map. So they had a map. So it'd be nice if we had a kiosk that had a map. I'd like to see a kiosk that had some, I didn't hear the history last time, that maybe had some pictures of quarrying activities. So a map, history of quarrying activities. One thing we talked about before was, Lisa, what was her name? The lady that was there again, that helped us.
Emily?
Emily. So one thing Emily brought up was, I mentioned that, I'd like to have a history maybe of the Italian immigrants that did the work, or the history of the park, and she mentioned, Native Americans. I don't think we should slight Native Americans, because I'm 1/8 American, Native American. But I would, if we do an urban trail, I'd like to see a nice kiosk, at the top of the cliff at the end of Y Street that had, that would be one of the things I'd like to see included on that one, was something, because it's overlooking the St. Helens, and it's overlooking where I was told that it was called Indian Rock at one time. I could be wrong. And but I think that should also be included, but not at this place. So a kiosk is one thing I'd really like to see there.
I would just add, I would agree with that. Probably last summer, I went to the Botanical Gardens for the first time, and I kind of drove by it slow and then turned around. I thought, is this right? Because there's not even really good parking there either. And so it took me a while to figure out, yeah, that's the trail. And so just a nice sign with information, and like you say, a map letting you know once you get down in there where you should be going would be nice.
Yeah, I think I would say inconsistent naming and signage too, because there's the sign there that says Columbia Nature Trail, I think is what it says, like the blue sign that's set back. And then it's called Columbia Botanical Gardens, and then there's a plaque there on the rock that I think calls it something else. I feel like it calls it something else on there.
Well,
So just consistency, and I know we've talked in the past about naming on if we want to rename, if we want to propose renaming that park, that's something we've brought up in the past too, so.
Yeah, I've talked to several people about renaming, and people that I've talked to felt like the word Botanical Garden was not appropriate.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, whatever we call it, Columbia Nature Park or whatever, if we ever change the name, but the designation, as it being said, Botanical Garden, people really have different expectations when they show up for and it probably should be named correctly, if they think they're going to a nature park.
To me, if you have a botanical garden, you have little signs that say what the flora is on the thing.
Which would be nice to have that there eventually, but I think we're a ways off from that there, just because I think there's a lot of cleanup to do before we can start pointing out things that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
want to point out.
Yeah, and I also like to, one other thing I'd like to see eventually done too, is the trails up above. We'd probably have to come in from the backside and get permission from the people who own the backside. But if we could do that, we could dump I'm sure Rich Bailey would probably let us do it if he owns the property, but we could, dump a load of 3/4 minus, or excuse me, I think 1/4 minus is the best stuff. 1/4 minus, and then we could line the trails up above, because I think coming from Belton Road would be very, very difficult to put gravel on those upper trails. So if we could come in from the back, the more we talk about it, there's more things. I'd like to see the trails gravel in the near future. That's not a big cost.
Yeah.
And then a kiosk so people know where the park is with some information on it.
And I don't know, Lisa, a quick question for you, can the recording hear someone who's sitting out there, with the mic system?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Typically, we do visitor comments at the beginning and not within, but go ahead.
Okay.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
Well, in March, I was trying to design a 5-kilometer walk route at the Botanical Garden and on Belton Road. The water, I know it's not a problem now, but the water was really lapping over the edge. And I couldn't use that loop because I didn't know if that trail was covered with water at certain times of the year, and I'd have to close the route or open the route based on the water. So I'm wondering if there could be like a boardwalk in that part of the trail, or if you're gonna do something to raise the trail up above the water line.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about that before, potentially having some kind of boardwalk, kind of like the Fifth Street Trail, something like that that's elevated above so that when the water kind of is right on the edge.
Well, and the other place that also, so so along the edge here where it overlaps, but also in the wintertime in this part that's back in here, you know, where you come down a hill here and you get to the wetlands here, and this part here is, I think is submerged a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And the part over here, I've never seen the whole trail submerged, but it does lap up on that part.
And same with the lower part too.
Yes, and the lower.
Just right at the edge there,
Maybe that's something we could add to the
master plan.
master plan
Yeah.
for parks.
Agreed. Right.
I would just add with what Jerry was saying, I think history-wise, I would think the most significant thing to highlight at this park would be the quarrying operations. Definitely lots of native activity around St. Helens, but none that I know of in that specific location, so I don't know that that would be the most appropriate location for that.
For what?
For Native American
Native American.
naming or something like that. Definitely there's lots of Native American activity down by Great Cliffs and down other parts of town, but not up there that I'm aware of, so.
It was more Italian up there.
Well, not so much Italian either.
Oh, really?
No, so most, the Italians in that time, so the quarrying was really big right around the turn of the century, so 1890s, 1900s. Most of the Italians that were coming to St. Helens at the time were working in the railroads and logging. Lots of the quarrying was done by Scottish immigrants and English and Irish, and so there were several Italians later on that did a lot of rock work around town. A lot of the rock houses you see were built by one Italian in particular, and so, but at that particular location, I don't think there was a lot of Italian activity per se, but definitely a big quarry. I think around 1904 is when that one really was big, and
Really?
and I think from what the research I've been doing, I think it was called the Sisters Quarry. I had to figure out why it was called that, but that's what it looks like.
Well, you know, one of the things I was thinking, you know, about a name, because one is I was thinking about the old quarry, but if it actually had a name, you know, like, you know, the Sisters Quarry Natural Park, you know, something that's got nature park in it, and it relates to the quarry is kind of what I'd like to see on the naming.
Definitely, we've got more time I can do some more
Yeah, why
research
don't you do some research
and
on that?
verify that, but right around that time when that quarry was big, that's when all of those, you've talked about before, those Belgian blocks, the pavers, were being taken to Portland and other cities for their streets, and so I really like the idea when you said incorporating that into a kiosk or having people can see
I
what
forgot about that, yeah.
what came out of there. I really like that idea.
Yeah, if you don't remember, I forgot we said that. I said we talked about when we made the kiosk, you know, Portland has, I was told, I haven't actually seen it, but I was told that out by Kelly Point somewhere in that area, they have a mound of these things. And I would think that if, you know, our mayor asked the city of Portland that, you know, we wanted, you know, a dump truck load or something like that, you know, we could probably get a hold of them. That would be great if we could, that would be cool, because you could have really a nice design for a kiosk there. Good idea. Yeah, I like that, yeah, it's cool.
Any other feedback, thoughts? All right, cool, thank you, Jerry. Next on the agenda under new business is master plan idea list update. I added this based on our last meeting. The staff, Shauna had mentioned, is gonna start looking at the master plan. And so, or maybe, I don't know if it was Shauna or Matt that brought this up last time, but that it would be helpful for us to start to brainstorm things that we would like to see in the master plan, really thinking of the future. And so I put this on as kind of a first step for us, kind of as homework, but I don't know if anyone brought ideas and wanted to have some conversations around that today, or if folks want more time to kind of brainstorm and think through it, we can always move it on to next meeting. I know we have a lot of people absent today too, so what does everybody think?
Well, I have 3 ideas, I just wanted, I don't know if
Okay,
they could be discussed. Because I don't think, if we're just putting ideas on there, then they can be discussed, if they're added or not added,
Yep,
for
I
whatever
think
reason.
that's fair.
So what I had here was kind of some of the discussions we've had in the last couple of months, but one of them is to make the property the city owns on Ross Road a park. It's not actually a park right now, as I understand. And have on that park a softball, baseball fields complex. And also perhaps a golf driving range, which is already there, but I'm not sure how it's all juxtaposition to do that. And the other item I had was to have another park down at the end of the property off Millard Road by the creek. Rather than sell that lot to a homeowner, to leave it more for everybody that's on that property right next to it to come down and be able to use that property. Those are the 3 or 4 things that I had.
Okay.
One thing I will say about that Millard property, that part down in the lower part, I thought about making that like a botanical gardens at one time, before I was even on this thing. I used to be really interested in trees. But that area, when the flood, was it 96 when we had the big flood?
Yes.
That whole area flooded down there, so, it.
And there is still a covered bridge, right?
Yep. There's still, well, I don't know if it's covered or not, but I used to go across that bridge a lot. Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
But I just remember that from, I went down and did a story picture on it when they put it in, that's the last time I was there.
Yeah, I think that bottom part is a good idea for a park, John.
And we'd already the upper area is actually already promised to be a park. Sale of the property, the guy that owned it, and with naming rights, he took a discount on the property to have naming rights for it.
Oh, really? What's the park gonna be called?
It'll be Dahlgren Park, I think.
Oh, Dahlgren, okay.
Eric made that contribution. It's about, I guess it's worth about $65,000.
That's where the driving range is now, right?
It's on that area, there's a whole thing down there.
Right, yeah,
Some of it's
Grace
owned by the
Baptist.
school district, some is owned by the, what church is that, Grace
Grace
Baptist?
Baptist.
Grace Baptist Church, and some is owned by the city. And they're trying to buy the property back that they give up to the school district for a school, because the school district don't want to put a school there. And the operating agreement with Grace is fine, except it's not I guess it should be done with a lease or something, so.
Right, now that'd be a good spot for a facility.
That's all I have.
Does anyone else have items?
Couple ideas I had, going back to ballparks, I think, keep in mind what Matt Locken said last time he was here, we're gonna need to look for ball fields that they can use and utilize, because according to what he said, none of ours right now are appropriate for their needs, so I think that needs to be into consideration. Anything that we go forward with in the future, just make sure that it's gonna work for everybody. And then again, on the idea of ballparks, I talked about this a little bit before, but I think parking's gonna be an issue in the future at 6th Street.
It is.
Already
It already is.
I think it's gonna be even more now that they're putting those container housing units in. Like I said, when we were there for baseball games, there was 15 or 20 people that parked in that space. And now that's gone, so I'm afraid that's gonna be a bigger problem in the future, so if there's anything we can start looking into doing there. Jerry mentioned this already, but I would like to see a kiosk at every park that maybe has some information and some history, and then maybe even a QR code where people could go for more if they want to dig a little deeper into the history. And most of these parks, they do have a pretty rich history and lots of photographs and lots of neat things you could do. Yeah, map and just a nice sign when you come in, you know what it is you're looking at and why it's called Campbell Park or why it's called Godfrey Park. And like I say, my thoughts are always going back to the history, what used to be there, and so I think that would be nice to incorporate a little more history into the parks.
Yeah, I like that idea too, and having kind of standardized kiosks that we have the same information at the entrance of every park, so people can really recognize when they're coming up to a park, what they expect to see there. Another thing I would like to see is connection points and pathways from all of our parks. So when you're at one park, being able to know what other parks are close by and have a clear path to get to that next park, and that kind of ties
Good
into
idea.
urban trail that we've, talked about before. The urban trail connects all these parks together, and once we can get the main loop of the urban trail created, then we can have kind of spin-off loops from that to connect to other parks. So I have a huge list of things that I brainstormed, and I'm not gonna read through all of them today, but maybe I'll create a document
Yeah, type it up
to send
next
out
week.
and attach to the next month's agenda, and we can kind of all talk through
Well,
it.
Carmen, the thing that I always harp, that I'm on for now is the urban trail, so I'd like to definitely see that on there.
Yep.
And I think, like Brandon, like, when you go to Sixth Street there, Sixth Street Park, and you turn in there at Seventh Street there, there's those two houses, and the city used to own those two lots. And I was in the planning commission, and the city sold those to build houses there, and I told them, shouldn't do that, because I coached girls soccer at the time. And I said, people are parking there all the time when they come to events, but the city went ahead and sold them anyway. Doesn't surprise me, but, somewhere down, you're right, there is gonna be, but you can't park along Sixth Street, though, there's a lot of parking along Sixth Street. But I think you're right, when those container houses get in there, there's probably not, get finished, there's not gonna be much parking on that Seventh Street side.
There's barely any in now.
Yeah, there's very little now, yeah.
Anything you guys want to add?
I don't know if this is something appropriate for the master plan or not, but maybe considering, I don't know, just some options to deter vandalism, so maybe increase lighting, or I know that's seems to be an increasing problem, so just coming up with some ways to maybe deter some of that.
Yeah, maybe like motion lighting or something in certain areas. I don't know if that makes a
I
difference
don't
or
know,
not.
it's not,
Cameras.
But yeah, cameras. To go off of your ball fields comment that you made earlier too, of needing more ball fields in town, one of the things that I think will be important with the master plan is like really forward thinking of future population of St. Helens, and thinking through where are we gonna be at in 10 years and what kind of sports needs are there gonna be and beyond 10 years, but like.
But right now, we have very, very few ball fields in this town.
Agreed, and that's why I'm saying we're in this position now where we don't have enough ball fields to support the citizens that we have now, and so making sure that we're planning for the future and thinking ahead so that in 15 years, however many years forward, we've got the property that we need, we know what the needs are gonna be.
Right.
Because the city's growing, and so I think that's gonna be really important to take into account.
The comment I have on that, because I wasn't here last time, is so Matt Locken talked about needing more ball fields. So how many more fields are needed?
Well, right now, we have a couple for T-ball at McCormick. We have a couple at Sixth Street that are for like intermediate pitching machine. Juniors have to play at the high school because there's no ball field for them, because they tore down the middle school one,
Now the juniors are who?
13, 14-year-olds.
And this is like,
It's not
summer,
third graders.
it's not
It's like summer little league.
Baby
Summer
room,
league, okay.
baby room type thing.
bedroom, okay.
I think the juniors age is who he was talking about, wasn't it? I think it was the 13 and 14.
Yeah, right now they play at our JV field.
Okay.
And our JV field's not the greatest. We, play on that every year. And then now they're coming and practicing that for us and stuff. So we all work together to keep it nice, but it's not that great a field.
How about those fields that belong to Boise, they used to belong to Boise Cascade, I don't know who owns those now.
That
City.
softball uses.
City owns them.
Those are all softball?
Yeah, and then there's also,
Sure.
and they're little, there's also some at the fairgrounds for baseball and
Yeah, that's for majors.
at the Moose Lodge too, right?
And most is minors.
Yeah, so it's just that one age that was using the middle school with the middle school when they built their fields shortened it, and so it's not accessible right now. But the plan for the high school is to put in
Turf.
some more fields, right?
Yeah, I saw one design that I saw was nice, but that's gonna take a year or two to get built. Where's the
Yeah.
high school gonna play? Well, that's being built.
So that was one of his worries, is that once that starts getting torn up, it's gonna be quite a while before it's usable.
Right, so we're gonna be playing road games every week?
And the hard
Eventually
thing for
those-
us is we needed a little bit more leeway too, because for us to build fields is gonna take a little bit. So going forward, when things like this happen, like Carmen said, is just really predicting what the future is gonna look like and how we can get in front of it, because, I mean, where would we put baseball fields right now that wouldn't impact another sport with the fields that we have? How do we?
Just a note, most of the ball fields in this community, particularly softball, have been built by volunteers. Sixth Street Field was originally built by men who wanted to play fast-pitch softball. The ones in Boise were built by, I think, the employees of Boise, but it was for the Pixie League, I think they used to call it, for
Yeah,
girls.
I call it Pixie
Yeah.
League.
Pixie League.
Yeah.
And then the Sixth Street fields became too small for its fast pitch, so they built a field at Camel Park and a concession stand. And I was part of building a field next to it at Campbell, and also with the two fields at McCormick Park, which has I think 270 feet softball fields.
McCormick, yeah.
And Jacob was a big part of the lighting of McCormick.
Yeah, I did a lot of fundraising.
Which puts added hours onto the times you can play. So we, in a way, for a town our size, we get to do pretty good. But you're right. Losing the one at the junior high leaves that kind of age group out.
Yeah.
And that's what I had in mind with this was that.
Yeah, and after all the dealings with the Ross Road stuff, because that's still in limbo right now, the city does not own the Ross Road property yet.
Right, but the city don't own, like the Moose Lodge field there, the Moose Lodge is owned by the Moose Lodge, right?
Yes.
So the park has nothing to say with it.
Right. Yeah, but we couldn't put a field on the Ross Road property yet.
Right, and then the fairgrounds, though, we can't say nothing with that.
Right. So it's, yes,
But
I
their plan is
definitely
to sell
even,
the Millard property and use the funds from that to basically buy back the land that they sold to the school.
that is the last
Great.
update that I have heard, yes.
It would be nice though if we can get like a big sports complex where
Oh, for
everybody can
sure.
go.
And I think that's a big part of the master plan too, is it's gonna be done. It was done amazing with what we did with internal staff, but it is gonna be done on a bigger scale this time, where there's gonna be a lot of community engagement, there's gonna be a lot of Parks and Trails Commission engagement, there's gonna be talks about where this funding comes from, if we need to go out for a parks bond or something along those lines to build something like that. And so a lot of the ideas we have are all great, and I wanna keep them coming, but we are gonna have time where we're really gonna dive deep into those ideas and stuff, and like with the signage and everything, those are things that we can get grant funding for. There's a lot of grants that support wayfinding and signage and kiosks and stuff that I've been looking into, so it's helpful for me to know. And I know this, me and Crystal have talked about, because she would really love to put her communication stuff up where people can see and have accessibility to see it. So that's definitely something that maybe isn't as big of a weight as some of these other things, but we definitely want to start doing things, not just piecemealing it together, but doing it right, where it's gonna last and we have the right staffing that it needs and the right locations for it and stuff. And we've seen that with, the new park update, and then some missing pieces there that we're doing now, right? And then with the Campbell Park, getting that all done with the sports courts, and how there's a big need for these big projects like building sports fields and stuff. That is a big project. I mean, that's something that would be similar to what the high school is doing. And so, where can we put these kiddos right now that aren't gonna have a safe place to play? I don't know, but I'm open for any ideas that people have. But we have to also make sure we're not taking away from someone else to provide, so how we can work together on that. And it's really too bad with the middle school how that all panned out, because that was a great location for that age group. So, finding out more what that looks like, and seeing when the time frame is for the baseball fields maybe to be impacted, because maybe that's not for a while still, because it is a big project. a 2-year project.
Because there's no place for them to play.
They're
They
what?
haven't started doing the work up there yet.
Huh?
They haven't started doing the work up there yet.
They've started, no, I mean, the junior high, there's,
Junior high is,
The field's gone.
yeah, it's gone.
so that's what I'm saying, it's
The
they're
field they
affected by
put,
the loss of
the
that.
field they put that was gonna be for us, yeah, they didn't think that one out very well.
That's interesting too, though, is like the thinking it out properly, like the distance needed and that sort of thing, and being able to know exactly like the different groups that are playing and what the requirements are for those fields, I think would be really nice to have in the master plan, like outline what the requirements are, cause I don't know those kind of details, you guys do, but it would be good to have that, so that that's kind of, it's really easy to find and refer to and make sure that we're keeping that in mind if we're making changes to fields, so that we aren't shortening something when that's gonna impact.
It's already too short.
Well,
Yeah,
shallow
yeah,
pop
but I
line
mean,
leaves the
for
park.
long term, just planning all of that out, I think would be really good.
McCormick's 270 feet, it really should be 300.
Still, it's still.
Maybe that's all stuff that I don't know.
Girls softball should be
I
225.
think, actually, I think McCormick's 285.
Huh?
I think McCormick's 285.
Is it now? Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of forethought that needs to be put into it, so we're not running into barriers like that later, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, let's throw a baseball field here without knowing the impact that's gonna have, or even if we're building the right
Right,
type of
that's what I'd
facility.
do, I'd be like, no, it's fine, just put one right here.
So one of my goals is to meet with all the sports groups too, even the ones that don't play on city fields, and ask, what are we lacking right now? What are we needing? What do you see happening? What can you bring to the table? Maybe it's, monies that they can bring as well, and match funds, and see how that is, because I also see, just with the time that I've been doing basketball, is a lot of times people will hold spaces even if they're not using it, because they wanna make sure they don't lose it, and how can we work all together to make sure we're all having access to what we need, instead of saying, well, we might need it Wednesday, but not really, we just like to have, that's yeah, and so, and I've been guilty of that with basketball, not knowing how many teams, but then I let go as soon as I know how many teams, but working together, or even have, different seasons at different times, so that you're not overlapping the other stuff too, because it is gonna be a challenge too with our indoor sports, because with the high school going down, volleyball, basketball, all of that are gonna start using more of the middle school, elementary, and that sort of thing. So there is a huge opportunity, not just for outdoor sports, but having an indoor recreation hall too that can support sport court type things too. Because anyone who's played basketball out here knows that that is a hard spot to get to. So they're definitely, and this is a huge sports town. It is.
We don't have the luxury like Portland had, where they can just say, we're gonna do this high school, you guys will play here.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, are those, the softball fields at Boise, are those gonna be going away too then with the proposed development down that way?
Eventually, from my understanding, that there is plans for that area that does not include those 2 softball fields, but I don't know how long that is, and I think the idea behind it is there would be another property at that time that would absorb those fields, whether it's Ross Road or however we do it, but so that's a big impact thing.
So it's gonna.
And that's the same thing
continue to
with
be a problem for a while.
the old rec center. There's plans for that property that does not include the old rec center. That's why we looked at the building that's by the high school, that way we can help manage the fields and stuff on the weekends as well. We'll still have the old rec center for a while, but it's not always gonna be that, in the plans, and especially if with the justice, facility that they're, a rec center right across the street from where you're doing court is probably not the best. I mean, it's not a horrible thing, but it's probably not where we want to be outside playing, or things like that. So I think it's just 2 way different things that we're doing. So the new building is nice for that, and it'll be nice because Scott Stockwell, the superintendent, really wants us to manage the fields on the weekends to make sure the people who have them reserved are able to play on them and not fighting with other people, and they can just come up and talk to us and that sort of thing. So we're gonna have a lot more part in what the field stuff looks like and everything. But yeah, but I hear all these needs, and like you said, Brandon, yes, there is a huge need, and it is gonna maybe get worse before it gets better, but that's why we're trying to do the master plan now, so we can really start putting those thoughts into practice, because it does take a few years to get, everything done. As we know, it's not a simple thing. Asbury Acres, I don't ever know what's happened with that. I know for a long time it was talked about being turned into some sort of sports complex, but I think that's dropped off the radar. When I was the president for soccer,
Well, there are
That's
two little
county.
league fields out there too.
what was that?
There's a little league field out there too, right now.
At the fairgrounds, but not,
Inside the fairgrounds.
yeah. So, and maybe there's some work in there to do more with the county too, to figure out what's going on with.
Well, maybe if you go out for a pond, it might be something to be included as the development of that property as well. You know.
Yeah, I remember,
Sure, it's easy.
I remember when we had all the problems with the field out at the fairgrounds, when they put that electric box in or whatever. They were like, yeah, you guys can't use this.
Yeah,
And then they was like, okay, we'll put a temporary road in for you guys to get to it.
right. It's hard. We had a soccer field up there because I was the president of soccer for many years, and we lost our field up there and then had to go over to Grace. And yeah, so it's been very much, so if we can provide some sustainable fields that we know that we're going to have all the time, that would be a really great thing for out here.
Well, Carmen, you don't want me to talk about piecemeal stuff, but you're talking about piecemeal stuff is, because I'm talking about the urban trail. Like, I don't know, a couple months ago, Mohammed and Doug and myself walked the proposed urban trail.
Right up near the mountain.
And so one of the things that we had talked about before is up on Wyeth Road, where the cliff is there, that, there should be some kind of barrier there, And so when we were walking there I'm not putting words in his mouth, Mom, it says, there needs to be something here. He said, no one's driven over it in years, but it has happened in the past. And now it's even steeper in that one area. And then one thing John Walsh was saying is that, because I know our mayor did not want a fence there because he thought it was visually impaired. Mohammed says, well, we need something there. And then John Walsh said, well, we could put in maybe one of those cable barriers like they have along freeways, couple feet high or so, and then some room between there and the cliff, so if someone, so piecemeal things, if Doug was here and Mohammed was here, when those budgets come up, I'd like to see, maybe that put in, because, actually, we can't really probably have an urban trail till we have some kind of barrier there. But the barrier is not just for the urban trail, it's also for, for safety. Because someone is gonna run off that cliff one of these days. If it stays the way it is, it's probably gonna happen. And the other thing I'd like to see too is where the trail comes out of Godfrey Park on 2nd Street, there's a little narrow plot there that the city owns. And you go up there where Wyeth Street and 2nd Street, I'd like to see, like a pedestrian walkway put across there. I don't know. But, just so it's done kind of ahead of time, so when they start putting in the urban trail, it's not, some pieces have been put in, like the Great Cliff Trail has been improved, and the 5th Street right-of-way has had massive work done on it. So, little by little, there's little pieces being done. I'd like to see those still being done before we, jump into the, until it gets approved and they get money for it. And I know Pat, we talked on Saturday, and she was talking about the American Walking Club, which she's a member of, used to be called Volkswalk.
Yeah.
She said they might be willing to put some money into it. That's why I wish Doug was here so we could help. And then the National Park Service, they have a section that's called the Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance. And one of the things Pat was telling me about was that the city of Hermiston in Eastern Oregon, they put in with several other little cities, Echo, Stanfield, and I don't remember the other one.
Aragon, I think.
Aragon, so that they could have a trail system that people could ride their bikes and walk through between those trails. So there's a possibility that maybe, we could try to get some type of financial, some money from the National Park Service. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think that those are great ideas. I think that doing the new master plan shouldn't stop us from pushing forward and moving forward with the things that we're doing already. And we do have already plans that are in place that you all are pushing forward and stuff with grant money, so it doesn't mean that we have to take a pause on anything. We can still keep going with the momentum that we have going right now. But as for looking for new places for sports fields and stuff, we'll just want to really, be thoughtful about that and where we're putting it and what kind of impacts it has, and if this is a good fit for it, and for years to come, is this gonna be something that we can maintain or that sort of thing, is my thoughts with that. But as far as the other stuff, and even sports fields too, I mean, if we can find a place that looks good for one, we can look at doing one, so.
Input, feedback, thoughts? No? Alright, next up is old business. Does anyone have old business to talk about today?
Just did.
No? Alright,
I was gonna, so I don't know if this would be under old business, but the McCormick Park is open, or the playground, the park has always been open. We are adding some benches around for people to sit. We're waiting for those to come in, and then we're gonna look at where the best place for that to be. There also is a zip line that they're coming out with that's more of an accessible one than the one we do have currently. So when that is ready to be shown and stuff, I'll bring pictures of what that looks like, and then we'll look at if we can, find the funding to add that as well, because that was the one part of the playground that wasn't accessible to everyone, but at the time that company did not have one. They were still building it, and then everything with COVID kind of slowed down that. But it would be an additional zip line that has a feature for folks who are in wheelchairs and things like that on it. So
I drive by McCormick every day, and since we put in that new playground, I've not seen that many people there.
yeah.
Every day it's packed, and that's awesome.
Well, and the parking there is almost an issue now because it is.
But it's just nice to see that many
So
people
nice.
on the park.
And the layout of it, I just feel like, there can be probably 50 kids out there, and it doesn't feel like that because there's so many things to do. Whereas the old one, could you imagine that many kids on there?
Well, usually when we had the old one there, you go there and you might see a kid, you might see no one.
Yeah.
And now you go by and it's packed all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, nice.
and it's nice to see all the different areas of the playground utilized. Like,
Yes.
there's kids on all the different pieces of it, not just on one little area. They're using it all, which is so cool.
And if you have been there, you might have noticed that we have swapped out the picnic tables. So we have the new plastic picnic tables in there, which for us will save so much time with painting and replacing boards, and we can just pressure wash it. They're pretty heavy duty. We've got a lot of really great feedback for those. Garbage cans, we're still waiting. They're on back order right now, but once those are there, we'll replace the ones that are in there. We love the art ones, it's sad but they are starting to rot out at the bottom. And these ones will have a lid on it that might deter people from bringing their household garbage and stuff there. And the squirrels that we have there taking out the garbage. And then we have the benches coming. We have new barbecuers as well that will be replacing some of the things. So it's getting a pretty good facelift there. And then we're gonna focus on getting the new benches or the new picnic tables down at Columbia View because we ordered enough for there, and then we'll go from there and start swapping things out and stuff.
You think homeless people trying to camp there?
No, we actually haven't had any. I really feel like
Campground?
and I feel like the more good stuff you have going on in a park and more people, we still have houseless folks that come and hang out during the day, but they aren't doing anything, and we talk to them when, but they're just there hanging out or whatever. And I just feel like with as much good as we're having, and sometimes they participate in some of the programming that we have. And so I think there's just a different feel there, I think. Who knows after dark what happens at the parks, because we come back on Mondays sometimes, we're like, oh. And I have looked at some vandalism type of stopping vandalism things. I just did a demo with somebody that they put this flashing light that will tell you park is closed and start taking pictures and stuff, and flashing lights. And they said they've used these in Denver at their worst parks or Detroit and stuff, and it's really made it where people aren't doing that. It's kind of like when you drive by those signs that tell you your speed and you're like, oh, I shouldn't do that. It's like that. And you can move it around too, but it does take really nice pictures too. So if things are happening, then you can turn them into prosecute and stuff as well. So we are looking at some things. So Brandon, that's definitely something that's on our radar now, but I think safety would be a huge feature in the new master plan as well for lighting and what that looks like and accessibility at the parks. Because Campbell's a hard one because it's so secluded, right? Like after dark, it's like the playground area.
Yeah,
You can't see what's going on.
It's dark, but you can't see over there.
No, and so just figuring out what the best fit for that is because I know there's some challenges over there. I've been trying to engage the kids in more positive behavior, like, hey, do you know who left this trash here? They're like, I'm like, do you want to pick it up and I'll give you a Dutch Brothers gift card? They're like, okay. It's their trash, so they put it away. I'm like, thank you so much. Yeah, they're like, okay. Yeah, I'm like, okay, Karen. That's what they usually call me, but.
If we see her coming, throw all our garbage on the
Right.
ground. She'll ask us to pick it up and warn us.
I want to weigh in on one thing that I understand was discussed on last week was placement of a bench at Nog Hill Park. Was that discussed?
Last week.
Not last month?
Last month.
Maybe every other meeting we talked about it, but not last month, I don't think.
Oh, I thought there was, oh. Howie said, I talked to Howard on Saturday, and he was saying that there was a discussion about a donated bench, and I think him and his significant other wanted the bench, this is the way I understand it, wanted the bench down by the kiosk, which is by the water treatment plant. And when we'd kind of done the urban trail, we talked about it having it up higher, overlooking an area up there. And Howard was concerned that if they put it up higher where the old housing site was, that they'd destroy a lot. But I said, well, the concrete could be mixed right there, or it could be mixed somewhere else, and wheelbarrow would probably be better if it was mixed there. But I thought this was discussed last time. So I would think the bench would be better up where it has a nice view looking out rather than down by the kiosk. Because he said, well, people can sit there when they're waiting. Well, I said, well, they can go read the kiosk while they're waiting if they're waiting on someone to show up. But I think, as far as people going to a nature park, they walk through there, they're going there because they kind of probably want to go for a walk and they want it to be, quiet. And, having a bench that's overlooking, the end part of Savi's Island and I think that's a better place for it to go. But I also feel like when it's put in there that, camas and other things shouldn't be destroyed also. It should be done in a environmentally friendly way.
I think that makes sense, but yeah, I don't think we've talked about the placement, so maybe.
Okay,
we can have it
maybe they were having that
conversation.
discussion among themselves then.
I do know that I got an email that said, hey, when we get the bench, please put it by the kiosk. So I didn't know there was another area.
Well, I know that what the people that were gonna donate it, they wanted it to be in the overlook. They were real, that's what they were told when they were gonna donate it, that's where it was going to be. And then when they found out that it was going to be down by the kiosk, they weren't very happy. I hope I'm not putting words in people's mouths, but that's what I was told.
What's the process for selecting a site for us?
I don't know, John. I don't know if the city does it.
Well, I don't think there is a defined process, but I think that's definitely something we should do, especially, that is something too I want to bring up in the future is our process for having things like memorial trees or memorial benches, like that sort of thing, because I know there's a tree at McCormick Park that had another tree that fell on it. We're trying to bring it back to life, but it's looking pretty rough and it's sad. And so how do you how long do you keep those things around if they're not
Viable.
Yeah, and it's so figuring out that, but also where the bench is, because like we talked for future things, we're not going to want to put a bench somewhere that we have a plan to do something else. So I think there does need to be some sort of, well, isn't it? Don't they? No, that's for memorial benches when they write a letter to the city and then ask. Yeah, but I think that same type of thing should be done even if we want to put benches somewhere just to get an approval that everyone thinks it's a good idea, so it's not.
Well, I think if a bench is going to go into a park, at least it should be brought up here. I mean, it doesn't have to be a long discussion, but I know that when we designed the urban trail, Carmen was part of that, you know, that's one of the things we said, we wanted a bench up on that cliff overlooking there. We didn't want it down by the water treatment plant, you know. So, but I mean, you know, if we get outvoted, you know, I'm fine with that too, if, you know, people, you know, I mean, I know that my opinion is not always what people like, you know, I understand that, so if, but, you know, but I still think it should be a group decision.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'll put it on the agenda for next meeting, just placement of bench and I'll talk about it and we can make a motion and then.
That sounds great.
Any other, yeah,
I was wondering, going back to the master plan, have you guys thought of a frisbee like disc golf?
we have disc golf at, McCormick.
Oh, okay.
There's a disc golf course there. Yeah,
It's
that's
across
one of
the bridge.
things that-
It's,
Oh, okay.
it's a really nice course too.
Yeah, it's very
They
nice.
need some improvement on like the placards there, they're kind of peeling and stuff, so I have that on my list as far as like general improvements and consistency across all the holes and kind of signage for that, but. Alright, any other discussion items for today? I just wanna say thanks to everybody who was a part of Citizens Stay in the Park, it was awesome. The opening of the park was awesome. And then just a note to everybody to check out the Waterfront Development slides if you haven't already from the city council meeting last week. There was a special session that kind of goes through the plans for the waterfront development and it's pretty cool. So I just suggest everybody goes and looks at that.
What's the requirement again?
What?
How do you find it?
It's online. I can send you a link or I can
Is this,
have a
you just go to the
packet
city?
printed out. The city website, yeah, there was a special session, I think it was last week, the Wednesday meeting at 6 p.m. and the Meyer Reed did a presentation of the plans for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And so it has all the details there. Phase 1 is funded already, so now they're gonna be going into, here we go. Thank you, Lisa. More specific plans as far as what's gonna happen in phase 1. So just, I think it's important for us to stay up to speed and stay involved in that, so. Go check it out. And
I have a few things, sorry for discussion. So just to kind of look ahead. So we're doing movie nights in the park every Friday night. So the commission's welcome to come in if you want to talk to people about the parks and stuff. Our last movie night, I think we got between 50 and 75 people. Yeah, and it's fun, and you guys can come and do whatever you want. I just got a popcorn machine delivered today, so that will be fun.
We were there, my kids really enjoyed it, so.
Did they?
Yeah,
Good,
they had
good,
fun.
good. And we're doing it at McCormick Park, so that's a little different. We used to do it down at Columbia View, but we really like the setting over there too, so it seemed like it was a good fit. A few other things coming up. Kiwanis is having their children's fair this year at the end of October, so definitely some time to think, but if you want to have a booth there, we're planning on having a booth, and you can be next to us or with us again like this last time. October 30th is when they're doing that. And then instead of doing trunk or treat this year or the drive-through boo like we did last year, we're looking at doing a mystery trail at McCormick Park where we'll have people set up with their stations along the trail and the kids can trick or treat and that way they can see the trails at McCormick Park. And so we'd really love if you had a booth for that too. And that one we'll probably do the weekend before the Kiwanis thing. So.
That would be fun.
Yeah, so just a few things, but anything that we're doing, I totally would love for you all. I'm getting ready to apply for a really big grant for after school programming, so hopefully we'll get that. And then I, put down anytime you guys talk about things that I think would be good fits for grants, I put it and then I research and see what I can find. So so I'll keep you posted on what grants I apply for, and if you see any, feel free to shoot them over. And I check with Jenny to make sure they're not conflicting with stuff that they're doing at the Riverwalk, because there is some grants that would be able to be used for both that they already have their eye on for that. So
Cool, thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So Shauna, you wrote down the National Park Service,
I did.
RTCA River Trails Conservation.
I did.
Good, okay. Just
Okay.
making sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Going once, going twice? All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Just walked in.
Good, how are you?
Well, you're done the time.
Meeting adjourned.
Did I not make it?
Nope, you're 4 seconds late.
30 seconds. Sorry.